In today's video, I'm going to talk about loop in C. So usually when we want to run the code for multiple times, we use loop. So in C, we have while loop, for loop, even we have do while loop. But this one's kind of very similar to the while loop, so I'm just gonna skip this one. Now let's get started. So for the loop, if we know how many times, how many times we want to run the code, it's called counter controlled. So for the counter controller, we want to define a counter first. We give an initial value for the counter. Let's say we start from 0, and we want to run the loop for 10 times. Then stop the loop. How could we do that? So if we use while loop, we can just while. So we want to check the counter less than 10. So that's a stop condition for the while loop. So we start from 0 and less than 10. Every time we do the certain code, let's say we want to print a number, let's print out the counter value. So I want to print out the counter every time, and I want to do the 10 times. So the counter plus plus, I do increment the counter by 1 every time. So that will run the code 10 times. Then let's print out this is the end of the while loop. And we can also print out the counter. Should be 10. Because it will check the counter. So counter start from 0, it will check the counter if it's less than 10. So we start from 0 the first time it's less than 10, and keep going until we get 10. So after this, after do the plus plus, if the counter equal to 10, this will be false. When counter equals 10. So it will end the loop, go to the end of the loop, it will print out the end of the while loop, then counter value. Now let's just run the code, see how many times we can do the print the counter. So you print out 10 times, start from 0 and 99. So that's 10 times. Then after that, it will end the while loop, print the end of the while loop, then print the counter value is 10. We can also change the while loop to for loop. So if we change that to for, let's just comment and run this code here. So if we want to change that to for loop, we can do for. Here you can see the structure. Here we have the initial counter value and how many times we want to run the loop, then the increment. So this is structure for loop. Now let's print out the I value. So the variable, we could use anything, just I, J, K, whatever we want to use. That's just a variable name. So this for loop will run this code for 10 times, start from 1, and when it equals 10, it will run the last time. So after the for loop, we can print out the I value. So that would be 11, because when it's equal to 10, So if we want to use I here, we have to move define first, so declare it first. So we have to move out the I here, then declare the in here. So here we can use it as a local variable, because if it's inside of the for loop, it's kind of local. We can only access the I inside the for loop. Outside the for loop, we cannot access I. So now let's run the code again. So the loop run 10 times, from 1 to 10. Then at the end of the while, or the for loop, the end of for loop, I equals. So let's try it again. So it run the loop for 10 times, from 1 and 10, and the end of the loop I equal to 11. So this is I++ is increment by 1 every time. What if we want to change it to increment by 2? We can change the increment condition. Let's say I equals I plus 2. That will do the increment by 2 every time. So if we run it again, it will 1. So that's kind of an infinity loop, because it never check I plus equal to 2. So that's I plus equal to 2. So the increment is 2, is 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. 9 is less than 10. So after 9, it will go to 11. 11 is greater than 10, so it will end the for loop, go to the end. So print out I equal to 11. That's increment by 2. If increment by 3, we just change to 3. Something like that. And this is a kind of like counter control loop. Sometimes we don't know how many times we want to run the loop, but we know the end condition for the loop. Let's say we want end while something some condition matches. Let's say we don't. So this time we want to get an input from the user. Let's say printf, please enter number here. So the user enter number, check the number. If the number is negative value, we end this loop. If it's positive, just keep asking. To enter the number. So we enter the number. Now we need to use scanf to get the input from the user. So let's define a variable here. Let's say call number, let's say number, and we get the input, scanf and number. Now in the while loop, we want to check if the number less than 0. If it's less than 0, we keep asking the user to enter the number. Then we ask the input again, so that they can check the number again. If it's minus 0, let's ask them to enter the number again. So that will check the number until we get a negative number. Then at the end of the while loop, we can print type the number is negative. So if it's less than 0, we run the loop. So outside of the loop, it will be positive number. So here that will be less than 0 because when the condition is true, it will run the loop. If it's not, it won't run the loop. So we need to give it a negative number in order to run the loop. Now let's run it. So let's enter number. Say if we give it 12, that's a positive number. So the number is positive. Let's try it again. If we enter number, let's say that made negative 12. So number must be less than 0. Try again. So how we go negative 12 again. So that number is a positive. So whenever we enter a negative number, it will run this part when number is negative. That's a condition check for, because we're checking only the number is a negative. It will run this part of the code. Now let's look at a real example. Let's say we want to calculate the average grade for the students. First, let's say if we have 5 students. How could we do this? So we need to define counter, and we need to count up 5 times, or we can also count down 5 times. So let's say do a counter equal to 0, and we want to count up 5 times. So while the counter is less than 5, we run the loop. So we want the user to enter 5 numbers. So we enter number, and we want to sort the number, but it's not the counter. Let's say we want to do the sum equal to 0 first, and we want to calculate the average. So average equal to 0. So let's just do the sum. So we enter a number, let's use the sum plus a number. So that's how we do the average. Sum divided by the counter. So we enter the number. Here we get the number here. And we want to add it to the define the number or the grade. So that's how we enter the grid. Now we just need to add the grid to the sum. That's how we get the total sum here. And we do counter plus plus. So let's increase the counter. So here we start counter equal to 0, and every time increase by 1. We ask for the user to enter the grid each time. So now let's run it. So at the end we can calculate the average. So average is sum divided by 5. And we can print out the average here. Now let's run the code. So enter the number, let's say 50, enter number, let's say 60, and 60, 70, 80. here we enter 5 numbers. You should get the sum right now and calculate the average for us. So we get the average 64. Now I'm going to set up a breakpoint as well here, and then debug it so I can step through the code. So step in, let's keep running the code. It will run line by line. So we here printf. In the scanf, it will read the input from the user. So here we go to the console and we enter number 10. Hit enter. Now to do the sum equal plus equal to greet, and we keep going. Thread and a variable, so sum equal to 10 right now. If you look at the console here, sum equal to 10, and average is still 0, greet equal to 10. And we go back to while again. So the counter is 1. It will make the condition true, so it will run into the while loop again. So we need to enter another number. Scanf will read another number, so we go back here, let's say 30. Now we do the sum. So we set up a breakpoint. It will help us to debug the code. We can go through the program line by line. I'm just going to stop it here and delete the breakpoint. So whenever we have a logic error, so we don't get the results as we expected, we can use the debug mode. So we can set up a breakpoint and step through the code. So now let's just run the code again. So we have 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 5 times, so the average will be 60. So this is only we know the student number, and we know we want to run the loop for 5 times, but sometimes we don't know the student number. We want to end the loop when to match the condition. So let's comment this out. So this time we don't know the number of the students. We want swap when the user enter a negative number. So how could we do that? So let's still do the let's do a flag. We use a flag to indicate the condition, so flag equal to 0, and every time we integrate, or we could just do a greet here and int sum equal to 0, int average equal to 0. So we have the greet, we have the sum, we have the average. Now we ask the user to enter your grade. We ask the user to enter the grade the first time, then we do scanf the grade, and if the grade is equal to 0, we keep going, or greater than 0, we keep get the input. Sum equal to grade, then we can calculate the average equal to the sum divided by the, we also need the counter to help us to count, or to record the how many students we have, count equal to 0, and every time we do count plus plus count, because we already have one here. So that's 1. If greater equal to grade equal to 0, or greater than 0, we do the count increase by 1, then calculate the sum. We can delete that. So that's at the end we can get the sum. So we can print out the sum. and then we can calculate the average. We can print out the average. So here we define variable when create sum and count. We calculate the average. We ask the user to enter the grid first. If the grid greater than 0, we go into the while loop. If it's less than 0, we don't even do the calculation because there's no reason the grid is less than 0. So let's run the code. We enter the grid, let's say 20. We have now it's greater than 0. We ask the user, after we get the sum, we ask the user to enter the grid again for the next student. Now let's run again. So we get one input. If it's greater than 0, count increase by 1, then sum is plus grid and then assign to the sum. Now we enter another grid here. So let's run it again. So we enter the grid, let's say 20. Now it asks us to enter the next one, let's say 30. Let's do 40. Let's do 50. 60. We haven't get some negative number yet, so it will keep doing 70. Now let's enter minus number, let's say minus 10. So we get the total sum and the average here. Let's also print out the count, the number of the students. So that's our count. So let's run it again. We enter the grid 20, 30, 40, 50, 70, 80, 90, 100. We'll ask to keep going. So let's type minus 10 here. So the number of students is 8. So we have 20, 30, 40, 50, 70, 80, 90, 100. That's total 8 numbers. And when we enter minus 10, it will end the loop, get the student number for us, and then calculate the sum, calculate the average for us. So that's how we run the loop here. For here, if we want to check the condition greater than 0, we cannot use for loop because there's a we don't know the count or the how many times we want to run this part of the code. So we have to use a while loop here. That's a big difference between while loop and the for loop. So this is everything for this video. Hope you know how to write the loop code now. Thank you for watching. If you find this video very helpful, please subscribe. Thank you.